But it's not that it's the nicest. No, but it's just yeah. So I don't know. I think 2705 on your. And then you know my. And then 24.
I didn't see two people.
I like my grandson. We should keep growing. I want to get people to know what's
Hopefully,
and you know what else? I don't know what happened. So they transfer them to, you're gonna see it, right? And it's a woman, they go, here, and we need to try to get them to go, small car, now. And she's like, oh, it's just like, she is like, oh, how do you find it? And you know, we have, I don't know what she's doing. Yeah.
That's one block.
I really like them. Yeah. So. Right, and technically, older with all of our no, but better. I went to that place. Oh my God! I mean, it's right. Different. Really like.
That's what I assume is a property line.
Well, as long as he makes money, that's all that counts.
And so that was what.
I mean, I think it's more expensive in this area. Adjoining to the west. There's only for them.
T1, not that, whatever the parking goes. That's fine. I measured 500 feet from.
It might be, I don't know.
One block.
He's waiting, yeah, he's waiting table. That he's doing, that's good.
Just knowing about the parking, about the curb, it's about the curb on the west side of the street.
But I know the houses are waiting because I collected. And on the other side. No, I was on the other side. Change. But I am
I did Google Maps.
Yeah.
500 feet.
Yeah, we're in. Well, you know,
Yeah, oh, let's do that.
You know,
Oh, thank you very much. Well, very, very good. Very good. How are you?
Yeah, sorry.
If you'd like to.
Are those?
You can.
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure.
What do they want?
I'm sorry.
This is all for the meeting or? This is April 12th.
No. This is today? No.
Yeah, yeah. 14th. Or was it 6:30?
Oh, he did. I'm recording. I'm just audio recording.
Yeah, these are minutes. I guess this is tonight's agenda.
All right, Dave.
Right now, I've got
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can bring them in and get them.
Good evening. I'd now like to call to order the meeting of the Northwestern University City Committee of Wednesday, June 14th. And
Councilmember Kelly,
present.
Alex Drehoff, Dave Davis, Julie Johnson,
Present.
Dave Schoenfield.
Present.
Thank you. So we have a quorum. There's 5 on the committee. Our Northwestern representative, Dave Davis is out of town, and I guess the VP of Operations couldn't make it. So we'll start with approval of the minutes.
So moved. As to all three, there are 3 sets.
Oh, all 3, thank you. And the second, great. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. The minutes have been moved and approved. I will now
Can you please leave that open? Can you leave it open? Thank you.
Can I ask, is there anyone at all here affiliated with the university? No one from the university is attending in any capacity? Thank you. Great. Great.
That's the university committee. It'd be nice if someone was here.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and begin with public comment. And do we have?
You got a list.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
Okay, Mike Vasilka.
Thank you. So I'm beginning to question the Northwestern's not-for-profit status. I find it absurd that the premise of the performance venues being proposed for the new stadium is that Northwestern is unable to afford the building and new arena and unable to afford operating facility without revenue from concerts. By various reports and tax returns, Northwestern has between 13 and 15 billion in dollars. Tax returns show the top 15 to 20 salaries range from 500,000 on the low end to 5.2 million on the high end, and the top 3 being head coaches and athletics, the vice president of athletics, etc. So the list includes the president, vice president, provost, and others. That's just, again, a absurd amount of money for supposedly not-for-profit status. And you also recently raised their tuition 4%. It's now the nation's most expensive university. $65,000 without housing, $85,000 with housing. Also pretty absurd. Further, NU may be in violation of their own charter, incorporating the university in 1851 by proposing that they build a performance venue, a for-profit performance venue, whereas in conflict, the charter reads in part, the board shall hold the property of said institution solely for purposes of education and not as a stock for the individual benefit of themselves, meaning the board, or any contributor to the endowment of the same. So a performance venue is a for-profit concerts are not an educational purpose. It is questionable, actually very possible, certain board members, donors, affiliates, board members, and donors are and will be profiting from this new venue. I think that's a direct conflict with their charter. So, Madam Chairman, this is the charter. Actually came from university files. I'd like to submit that to you. Maybe you can ask, I'd like you to ask Corporation Counsel to investigate if that charter is in fact in conflict with what is being proposed for the new Ryan Stadium and performance venue.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. And this is recorded, so we'll see if we can't get this, if it's possible to upload this to the website for the City University recording, so those will be available. Great, thank you. Next, we have Emily Levin.
Hi, so what I want to bring up is noise concerns and how any plan to mediate them is actually going to increase noise. So what they've been saying is that it's going to be low-level noise and the canopy is going to catch noise. Well, when I looked up what people are saying about that, a lot of attendees of these football games were saying, you know, when I go to any stadium with a canopy, it's always just so loud. It's so much louder. So I looked into it. And it turns out the loudest stadium in college history is Husky Stadium, called the Washington Huskies. At one point, they got a 133.6 decibel level. And this is attributed by many people to the fact that they have a canopy. So the theory is the noise bounces off. It stays in the stadium a little. It still goes outside, just not as far. And then it's amplified. Now, to look at what kind of noise level that is, 100 decibels according to CC, typical sports game, it's not going to lead to hearing damage unless it's sustained for 15 minutes. 110 decibels is typical for rock concerts, like the kind Northwestern wants rezoning to host. It only takes 5 minutes to cause hearing damage. 120 decibels and over, immediately just hearing that, that's going to damage your ears and that's going to cause visual pain. So they've designed a stadium that, from real stadiums we have, is going to bounce noise back and amplify it. And we're talking about 10 to 20 decibels under the point where it causes physical pain and hearing loss.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mary Rosinski.
Hi, thank you. I actually wanted to dig down to three things. Before one, whether or not this discussion about Ryan Field is in the purview of this committee, And I would argue, that yes, it is, because what's going on there affects the T1 district, which affects all the people behind it. And anything they do in that neighborhood, in that R1, in that U2 district, is 39 acres. And that's just Ryan Field. So I'd really like to change the discussion a little bit when we are talking about Ryan Field. Not Ryan Field, it's the 37-acre U2 district. And that is huge. It's bigger than any given neighborhood surrounding Covington or Wilmette. So I would argue, yes, it is. And I'm disappointed that it's known here. The T1 district adjoining the Ryan Field, I'm concerned about that, particularly because of the way they built this down. And there are, at the end of the street, there's really huge Hampshire and James. There are pillars so that that gate can be removed. The entire other 600 feet is strictly fence. And I think either we value neighborhoods in our community or we don't. But if we turn our neighborhoods into thoroughfares so that Northwestern can exit people through the neighborhoods, I think we're doing a good service to our entire community. And if you do it here, you're going to do it everywhere. And then the fourth thing is 4.4. Should we have a subcommittee in the city council specifically to address the U2 and T1? I don't know if that one's here for you, maybe the city council, but they're definitely the residents surrounding, and there's thousands of residents surrounding the stadium that are directly impacted even now. And we have, over the last 30 years that I've been, we have been in the neighborhood. We have been in front of city council. So sometimes all year long, all summer long, again, just trying to keep Northwestern in their boundaries. I could not go into my neighbor's boundary and have a party there. I could not throw my litter over there without getting in trouble. And I think what we're trying to say is Northwestern, let's just be neighbors. But we don't have a venue. You guys in the T1, in the U1 district, you have you. But we don't have one right now, and we're always kind of having to gather up and spend our whole summer, and other people around the city are enjoying it. Making sure they don't put up 18-foot dusk to dawn lights, making sure that they get regulations going on right during the football game. I mean, it's just like, it's non-stop. It would be nice to be able to have an ongoing conversation with representatives. There's 2 or 3 community groups that we have leaders there. There's individuals that I have other opinions. So I'm not saying it should only be anti-big, things. I think we have a good relationship with good representation and awards, the council members. And then some people from Northwestern, we can have an amicable relationship and be good neighbors to each other.
I think we're married.
Great, next, Sebastian Knowles.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Sebastian Knowles, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Community Alliance for Better Government. Our organization was founded on the core principles of government transparency and equity, which is why we are here advocating for a community benefits agreement with Northwestern University so that they can be held in order to develop any new stadium infrastructure. The current promises of increasing Black intergenerational wealth and jobs for low-income and minority residents are flimsy with no real legal backing. Minority communities have seen promises both in Evanston and nationwide that have gone unfulfilled. A community benefits agreement would ensure that any development occurs with careers that pay a livable wage here in Evanston. Additionally, we believe that if Northwestern University is truly committed to increasing Black intergenerational wealth, legally binding contributions to both Evanston's reparations fund and affordable housing funds should be included within the community benefits agreement. The university has been responsible for denying Black students on-campus housing in the 1960s, segregating them into Evanston's Red Lions 5th Ward, again during the 1960s. We as a community have committed to repairing the harm done to Evanston's residents. It is only right that our good neighbor, Northwestern University, join our journey to truth, reconciliation, and repair. Thank you.
Mark Carlin?
Yes. Hi, I'm Mark Carlin. I live in 9th Ward, and I wanted to point out that while I object to the permit for for-profit use, particularly entertainment and foods, which I think will negatively impact the livability of when it's become as a city, I did want to represent the specific issue of congestion that these concerts are going to cause. We in the ninth ward probably won't hear the music, although we'll travel, as this young lady said, quite far. But my wife and I own property on Sheridan Road, and the traffic that is going to be coming in and out, hundreds and hundreds of cars for these concerts is going to be a nightmare. It's not only going to affect those of us in Evanston who have property here, but it's going to affect the surrounding communities too. And I think it's kind of a slap in the face to the kind of North Shore way of life that Northwestern would seek to become an entertainment venue when its mission is educational.
Thank you. Next, David Cook.
Good afternoon or good evening. I'm speaking regarding section 4.4 or agenda item 4.4 regarding the agenda item proposing creation of a new subcommittee. I don't support the creation of a subcommittee for the city council to specifically address the U2 and Q1 districts located in 7th Ward. The city council already has this subcommittee, which I think is doing a pretty good job dealing with the community issues in Northwestern. The city council doesn't need another subcommittee. The city council needs to do its job, protect the community against overreach of Northwestern, and reject the currently proposed zoning variances. Title 6, Chapter 1 of the Evanston Code, which is basically the zoning ordinance of the city of Evanston, says the purpose is to minimize or lessen the congestion in the public streets. It also says that the zoning ordinance is also supposed to prohibit uses, building, or structures that are incompatible with character established zoning districts. The zoning ordinance text amendment as proposed by Northwestern would eviscerate the existing U2 ordinance and move control of all proposed events from the city to Northwestern and allow them to compete unfairly with all of the local businesses. It would allow for unlimited outdoor band playing, weddings, and other parties, eliminate the nonprofit nature of events, which were to extend primarily for residents of the city, eliminate the requirements for sponsors of the events to obtain a certificate of code compliance, and allow attendance of these events to increase from 10,000 people to the capacity of the facility. And we know that they're proposing that might be 37,000. They're requesting the elimination of the need for adequate university parking, and instead they offer a plan to develop a traffic management plan, but they haven't really given you the specifics, so they're going to give you an MOU after they sort of get the zoning approval. That's like letting the cows out of the barn before they close the door, or the fox or the chicken hen, or whatever you want to do. They're asking to allow diesel trucks to idle, and then we all know that that's a zoning ordinance no. And they're asking to allow amplified concert music between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. 7 days a week, and extending 10:15 on Fridays and Saturdays and days before a holiday. I mean, that's 7 days a week for whenever they want to do it. The noise ordinance, which currently prohibits any person within the city to make, continue, or permit any loud, unnecessary, or an unusual noise, which annoys reasonable person or ordinary sensibilities. It prohibits any noise that disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, health, peace, or safety of others within the limits of the city. They don't talk about that. They just don't talk about it because they're just going to be allowed to make the noise if it's going to be amplified. And they're going to ask for forgiveness afterwards. And then they'll get their MOU about how they're going to fix it with no teeth in that MOU. Many of these provisions, like truck idling, carve-out, are contrary to existing ordinances. None of these provisions comply with the stated purpose of the zoning ordinance to minimize or lessen congestion with city streets. All the Northwestern proposed provisions promote uses in buildings that are incompatible with the character of the existing zoning districts, and these requests should be rejected. Thank you.
Okay, next, Aaron Cohen.
Thank you, Aaron Cohen, 7th Ward. I had hoped that after the initial obfuscations of the Tripp-Umbach report, where no business assumptions or underlying data were revealed, only results with no clue as to how they were derived. In the obfuscations of the so-called opinion surveys, where no methodology was provided and no tabbed answers were ever provided. That when Northwestern submitted its documents to the Land Use Commission, its studies, that we would finally see more transparency. And I'm just going to look at a granular level at one of those reports which shows, alas, that has not happened, and that's the environmental report. In the environmental report, which was conducted, a survey conducted by WJHW, what I understand is a highly respected firm in the acoustics business, the underlying data to be used and assumptions to be used was provided by Henderson, the firm that Northwestern provided. Here is the fly in the ointment, which shows continued obfuscation. Using an A weighting for acoustic analysis is appropriate to crowd noise and announcer noise for concerts. But it's not appropriate for concerts. C weighting, which covers frequency ranges at the upper levels and also at the boom, boom, boom bass levels, would have been appropriate to use in the acoustic analysis. But it was not used. So Northwestern has submitted to the Land Use Commission a fundamentally flawed acoustics report. And again, the underlying assumptions that were provided to the firm doing the analysis have not been revealed. So that the pattern of obfuscation and a lack of transparency has continued from the public relations blitz that was initiated now into the more serious and detailed Land Use Commission and zoning requests. And I thought that should be pointed out, and obviously these flaws will be gone into in much greater detail at the Land Use Commission meeting. Thank you.
Nicely said.
Sonia Cohen?
Hi, I'm Sonia Cohen. I'm in the 7th Ward. And I just wanted to reflect on some of the history of Northwestern and their attempted use of Ryan Field and the surrounding areas for commercial events. And I want to thank Edie Russell, who has done a phenomenal job documenting this. So I'm just going to go through a few dates, and then I'm going to read an important decision that was made that would be overturned if we decide, the city decides to change the zoning through a text amendment. So in 1969, there was an illegal tennis tournament at McGaw Hall. In 1970, a legal tennis tournament at McGaw Hall, city sued the venue. 1970, Bears sued city to enforce contract with NU to play Philadelphia Eagles at Dyke Stadium. Bears attorney cites previous tennis tournaments as precedent. Game is played. I don't have the facts here, but I think there was traffic gridlock throughout the town that day. In 1971, City of Evanston enacts zoning ordinances prohibiting pro sports and commercial business operations on NU property. City sues NU in attempt to halt a scheduled professional tennis match, and NU applies for a variation to permit, and NU attorney cites severe gains as precedent for such a variation, and it continues on. There's rock concerts in 1973. NU wants to have a Virginia Slims Lady Tennis Tournament in 1974. In 1975, NU sues city seeking to allow a professional NBA game. And they apply for zoning to the zoning board for variation to use Dyke Stadium in the golf for professional athletic contests or other commercial purposes. Does this sound familiar? NU sues the city to declare Evanston zoning ordinance unconstitutional and to try to lift the city's zoning ban. And why this is going to be a huge pivot point for the entire city of Evanston is this went all the way to the Illinois State Supreme Court. So in the 1970s, the city of Evanston spent $1 million, which is probably $8 million today, in legal fees to ensure the right of every resident to be protected under the zoning code. Should this change go through, the city is stripping those residential rights for people, I don't know, a half mile, a mile in circumference of the city.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And pretty much everywhere, because the truth of the matter is we don't know what this will be like. We don't know the cost. In addition to tennis shows, they had horse shows. And one of the horse shows, there were parties all night, the loudspeaker was going all night. The horses were kicking the stable walls to such an extent that the neighbors were worried about a horse stampede. And there was also a problem with horse manure and that it ended up in people's yards. And that was not Northwestern putting that on, but a vendor. So further, it diminishes who's responsible if Northwestern is allowed to have other vendors do events there. So I'll just end with this. It goes all the way to the Supreme Court. On December 4th, Illinois State Supreme Court. On December 4th, 1978, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled in favor of the city of Evanston, pretty much after Northwestern had gone through every appeal level they could go through. The state Supreme Court of Illinois determined the city had a right to protect its citizens over a commercial venue at the state. And what you see, chronology, is that the Bears cited the precedent of the tennis match. Northwestern cited precedents of having events go forward. And if this happens, this precedent could impact the entire city. Because what's to stop Northwestern determining there's another area of the city that is of commercial value?
Another developer.
Yeah. Or, yes, thank you, or another developer. So, that's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see, would anybody else like to speak? I don't have anybody. Yeah.
Maybe. Oh.
Hi, my name is Anusha, and I am an undergraduate student at Northwestern. I'm also a member of Waffle Free Northwestern and Solar, students organizing for labor rights, two student organizations that are part of the Northwestern Accountability Alliance Coalition. And at the last few meetings, I've had the opportunity to speak on some of Waffle Free and given our history, as well as those of campus workers and the natural environment with the administration at the university. Today, however, I'm here to share my perspective as an undergraduate student and to advocate for improvement of this agreement. There is an inherent privilege that we as students hold attending a prestigious private university like Northwestern and occupying a space in the community for 4 years. And I believe that it is our responsibility as students to use that privilege to influence complex and often discriminatory history between business, minoritized communities of color in Evanston, and the Evanston community as a whole. As such, all of the community business agreement that would allow this for-profit institution to redefine what it means to be here and to give back to the community that has supported it for decades. In negotiating a community benefits agreement, Northwestern has the ability to rightfully contribute to Evanston's reparations program, make meaningful investments in affordable housing for low-income residents, and commit to transparency, environmental sustainability, as well as just labor conditions for workers throughout the duration of the project. These are but a few of many ways that Northwestern can use its capacity to give back to the community in a purposeful way. I, like all Northwestern Accountability Alliance members, am not against the construction of stadiums. What I am against, however, is a missed opportunity for this university to take accountability for their actions and finally meaningfully contribute to the community without which they would not exist. I hope that Northwestern intentionally listens to this coalition as well as the entire Evanston community and finds a way to support Evanston in any way that it can.
Thank you. Yeah.
What is so frustrating is that in 1996 or 1995, when we fought for the professional sports tennis, and we presented all kinds of material, and that was a time when I gathered all the information that I could put my hands on Northwestern history, and this information is all at spotlightevanston.org, and it includes all the documents that were microfiche at City Hall, which there are all the reports. There was a court reporter during the zoning and the various commissions at the city, and the court reporter wrote all this stuff. And I still have all this stuff in my attic. And in 2019, I decided to put it in this site so that people would have access to it. And I even sent the link in 2019 to the various council members and people. And the refrain that was said by them was, oh, that's ancient history, doesn't count. It's basically like saying the Holocaust never happened. Let's move on. You know, what the history shows, which was now pointed out, but it goes on again and again, is that Northwestern's intent to have commercial and entertainment 365 days a week, even possibly, was even spelled out in the minute of one of these meetings that you can see was happening in the 70s. It's all there, you know, all of these documents that they are there. What's interesting in the city now, these documents that basically disappeared from the city, and the city no longer has even a microfiche reader. That's very interesting. But I have the documents. So, what I would like is for the city employees to be able to look at the history, not just the brief history, which is 2 pages, not the long one that I enumerate everything up to 2020. I stopped after that in disgust, which is many pages long, but the actual transcripts. I have also the transcript of the 2019 proceedings, which because you don't have a court reporter, I looked at YouTube and just transcribed by hand, word by word, what was there. And during those meetings, the neighbors, the people that were opposed to the 2019 Welsh Ryan Arena event made a lot of presentations regarding pollution, regarding noise, regarding parking. And we have to reinvent the wheels now every 2 years, every 3 years. Before it used to be at least every 20 years. And, it's such a burden on us residents. I'm not employed now, so I have more time, but I am really burnt out. But a lot of people, the younger people, they have families, or they have jobs, and we have to fight this mega corporation. So the one thing I would like is for people in the city to read the stuff on my site. This is not propaganda or anything. It's just the documents that the city collected that are there for everybody to see. I mean, there's nothing untoward or dishonest about it. It's what happened. Some of the problems, for example, there was this graduation right now on Monday. On Monday, my street, I live on Livingston Street, there's no parking because of street cleaning on that particular Monday. Even so, and so there were not many cars parked there at all, because we know. But even so, I come out of my house, and there is this one man who parked his big car in front of the fire hydrant on the street where there is no parking, where there's a sign, no parking. You know, you have to go and read it, of course, a few steps away. So I confronted him and said, you know, you cannot park here. And he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave. And then finally he shooed me off, and because he was reading the 2 tickets. Thank goodness at least the police gave him 2 tickets. One, only one for parking on Monday, and the other one for parking in front of the fire hydrant. But if this is a problem even in an event which is like a family event, I mean, the graduations are something that we live with, and they should be there, the graduations. Imagine what will happen to our neighborhoods week after week with all these concerts and everything. People. And we were promised, basically, in 2019 by Alderman Rebel that we would have a parking district or something happening. It never happened. It never went to it. It was never discussed. Then we had another discussion earlier on this year about it. And again, nothing was done. And now Northwestern is appropriating the point of, we're going to, you know, as a favor to us, that we're going to suggest that we're going to have parking limitations on our street. It's not Northwestern, it's the city who has to do that. And Northwestern shouldn't get kudos for it. Just like Northwestern gives themselves kudos for having supposedly had a committee with people from the neighborhood discussing Northwestern issues. Well, they never told any of the people in the group that this project was coming forward. So they have a long history of lying. They have a lot of time on their hands. It's a big corporation. They don't need to do something right there in the moment. They can wait a year or 2 years, or in this case, 3 years, and come back. And so Dave Davis, who said, you know, I'm basically promising that we're not going to come back in 2 years. Well, they came back in 3 years. It's not for 40,000 stadium, it's for 37,000 or 30,000 stadium. What's the difference? Thank you.
I'm Kelly Marcel, and I'm a 7th Ward resident and a member of Fields Opportunities. And I've lived in the 7th Ward for like 2.5 blocks south of the stadium for almost 24 years. I think the rebuild is going to be fantastic. I am an investor in a business on Central Street. Businesses need this, they want it. I've done a FOIA to see about the crime that everyone is alleged is going to happen. I did it for the last 2 home football seasons, home games. And I have to say, in the 7th Ward, the biggest thing that happened was parking violations and towing. I believe that a lot of this is hyped up because people don't want concerts. I understand the reasoning behind some of it. But I have to say, in all those years, they've been a great neighbor. Nothing has happened. And when it has, and we call them, it's been taken care of. There hasn't been trash all over. There haven't been drunks stumbling all over. All these things that I hear that are going to happen have not. And I think it would be, according to the Pride's report that was published, most Evanstonians want more to do in Evanston. There's just not tons of stuff going on. I think it can be managed. I think, you know, graduation day traffic was horrible. That was in the middle of a work day. I got stuck in it and it was managed very well by the police. Just as I say, things will be managed very well if there are concerts, and not all concerts, events. So I just want to tell you that I know I'm in enemy territory here, and it's hard to get up and say this, but it's just not all that bad. I mean, I just don't think all these things everyone's going to worry about are necessarily going to happen if you have open conversations with Northwestern. If you don't scream at them and come at them with everything, they'll listen. I don't know. I've had that experience. My neighbors have had that experience. Please don't roll your eyes at me, Sonia. And don't shake your head. No, that's rude because I didn't do it to you. So you know what?
Okay.
I have every right to say what I want to say.
You can say it.
So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We came here to have a conversation, but.
That's what I'm having.
So, I don't have any.
Okay, Jack.
Thank you. I'll do my best to be brief. My name is Jackson Heller, lifelong Evanston resident. Spent most of that time in the first ward, but I very recently moved into the third. And the message that I've been hearing from Northwestern on this matter, on the Rhinefield matter, is that they've made a lot of good promises. They could make more, but they've made some good promises, and what I'm hearing is entering a memorandum of understanding after most of the approvals are already done is going to be enough. And it won't, because it's been mentioned a few times before that what happens if Northwestern makes a variety of great promises and an MOU and then fails to live up to them. And there's no enforcement method to hold them accountable to that. Well, then we won't be able to hold them accountable to that. So, I forgot to mention earlier, like Evanston resident first ward, member of Brief by Evanston, which is a part of the Accountability Alliance as well. And you're going to notice a theme here because the one thing that will make sure that everyone's interests and concerns are protected is a community benefits agreement. What needs to happen is deliberately, fully negotiated, legally enforceable agreement with the city and deliberately negotiated, fully enforceable agreement with the organized community. That's the community benefits agreement. That's the only way that any of this is going to work out, and that's what needs to be done.
Sure. I'm just going to call on folks who haven't spoken yet, and then I'll stick with it. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Chair, and thank you for committee members for, hearing all the comments this evening. I'll be brief. I didn't prepare my remarks on, it was one of those days where, kind of got the kids some pizza, hopped in the minivan, and right over. But there were a couple of points that I don't think have been made so far. The one is I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm also the president of Most Liberal. And people sometimes ask about the name. And so for those that don't know, it is actually the vision statement of the city of Evanston. And one of the reasons that, always comes back in my mind to what we're trying to do in raising awareness here is that that's not just about quality of life. That's about the city living up to the values that, we are all striving towards. We're not perfect, but we're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to get towards more affordable housing. We're trying to, have a community that, aspires towards much more racial equity than we've seen in the past. And when it comes to just a couple of recent developments here, the reason why Most Livable City Association is part of the Northwestern Accountability Alliance, and we do support trying to get Northwestern to sit down at the table with us. You can see they're not here tonight. We need our council members and everyone in this community to demand that those types of negotiations happen before the plan development proposal goes to the city council. And what Northwestern is saying is, hey, we want to build an $800 million stadium. Well, guess what? The scale of that thing, you could just look in the news this week. USF is building a stadium brand new for under $400 million, less than half the cost. And yet what we're hearing from Northwestern is just trust us on all the trickle-down effects that this will bring to the broader community. This is a gift to all of you in Evanston. And we agree with the entire community here. That's not enough. These types of promises need to be enforceable. They need to be legally enforceable by the community through an agreement with community stakeholders, not just some sort of MOU that's negotiated after the fact with the city. And the types of things that can go into that agreement are the types of values that we're aspiring for in this community. We can get Northwestern to invest in affordable housing. We can get Northwestern to put money into the reparations fund. They have an incredible amount of wealth, an incredible amount of influence, and they prefer not to be having those conversations. Judging by the fact that they're not here, they think they can just continue to bypass and stonewall until they get through the land use, just move ahead. Now, the second piece is when it comes to the zoning. The main thing that we are saying here is that is a huge city planning decision. It needs to be looked at from city's interest and the residents' interest, not from Northwestern's perspective. And you've heard some of the history of this, right? Once that decision is made, it's going to be almost impossible to reverse. You can bet, pretty much everything you own that Northwestern will defend that precedent once they're allowed to commercialize the district. So all we're saying is, hey, let's pause, reflect on what they're asking for, and instead of going ahead with commercializing the U2 district, they can already, under the current zoning, have 35 days of events of up to 10,000 people that aren't football, any kind of a nonprofit community event they would like, the types of things that they're putting on their postcards, right? Local musicians, winter festivals, ice skating. How about we start there, see how they can handle that, and then we'll be able to have much more information about what Northwestern is actually able to do. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? I'm a friend of Dave. Dave is this little kind of friend. But I just need to let you know that he didn't skip tonight. He's at a family event that's been planned for a year in Jamaica. So that's where he is.
Right. No, I stated that he's out of town. I don't know where the other,
Yeah.
there are two Northwestern representatives on the committee.
That's where he is.
I have to say something real quick about what happens when you get a concert venue in your city. So I grew up in Highland Park. We did not live right next to the venue. We lived like 1 or 2 miles. We would still get people parking in our driveways. And this is like early 2000s, before they had Katy Perry, before they had everybody, when they had the CSO, they had an avocado band. So there was already a huge demand because people love to go to outdoor concerts. Then later I moved into a venue right across from the big train station where they push everybody to walk out to the festival. And we had a thriving downtown, like the real downtown at that point was in Ravinia and not really so much downtown because of the recession. We had restaurants, we had little stores, we had lots of artists selling stuff, and that all closed down. There's one restaurant left. And the reason they're left is because the city finally said, okay, we will put 2 to 4 cops in that parking lot every single concert, and they will stop every car. And they will say, are you shopping? Where are you shopping? Are you going to a festival? And I mean, that doesn't even work all the time because people lie, and then all you can do is give them a ticket. So in terms of like saying that this is some unexpected thing we can't predict and we should assume on the good side, no, we know people are rude about parking. We know people will consider a ticket the cost to pay for parking when there isn't parking available. And, we're right by the hospital, we're right by the fire station. We're not just talking about inconvenience, oh, I can't go out. We're talking about who dies of a heart attack because the ambulance took longer to get them to the ER.
Youth during the cap.
I just want to say that last Friday, purely for research, I went to the Dead and Company concert at Freely Field. And before and after on all streets outside, it was a zoo. I mean, it was a zoo. There was no cars moving anywhere. Addison, Waveland, Clark, I couldn't even make it over to Sheffield. But it was just walls and walls and walls and walls people. And that happened as I was walking out for probably 45 minutes, maybe more, as you're trying to walk out and get through, and there's cars honking, there's people yelling and screaming. I had a decibel meter, and it was almost the same level of sound outside the concert as it was when the concert was playing inside, because it's just cars and the noise. And do you want to do that to Central Street? Number one. Do you want to do that to Isabella? Because Isabella doesn't even lead anywhere, because you can't go across the tracks. You're going to go to Sheridan Road. You can't go south because you're going to hit the canal. You only have a very, very limited amount of places for cars to leave or get to the concert or get away from the concert. And it's just going to be worse, a lot worse for a lot longer. And I don't think you want to do that to that area, especially if it's a trauma center, like this lady was saying. They have to get ambulances and they have to get doctors to that place. And then they'll lose their trauma center rating, I guess.
Thank you. Yes, you, sir.
Yeah, very briefly, Kelly brought up Evanston Thrives. It's a report that I think was fabulous, a process that I participated in. And I just have one brief question. I'm curious if Northwestern participated in the Thrives process. And if they did, during their participation, mention the plan for Rebuild Ryan Field. Because I find these two visions diametrically opposed, which I find curious. Evanston is investing $3 million in what I think is an excellent plan, vis-a-vis the $800 million that Northwestern seeks to invest in something that, rather than Thrives, would decentralize and revitalize all of the business districts in Evanston, celebrate their unique qualities, and revitalize downtown. When you read the Northwestern proposal, it's really to shift the epicenter of entertainment to North Evanston and to that facility. So I'm curious of what their participation is.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. First, yeah.
Yeah, there's been some outstanding, I think, points made this evening.
Your name?
Oh, Monty George, 7th Ward President. And I just would like to add two other facets that I think are worth considering. One is the fact that the stadium dumps all the noise into Wilmette. I think it appears to be intentionally for concerts, which I think is being a terrible neighbor to Wilmette. If you look at the sound decibels to the south and to the east, it's very quiet, 30, 40 decibels. But as you get across Isabella, pointing northwest, it's 75, and as Aaron was saying, that study is terribly flawed to begin with and isn't using the appropriate basis for the sound, and that would be maybe 80 or 90 or 100 or who knows. So just as a neighbor, it seems like a terrible thing to be doing to our, friends in Wilmette. And second, I think it's a false claim that this is the only possible way to add economic expansion to Evanston. There's such a high cost to this. We wouldn't be here if there wasn't a high cost to this. Why does it have to be on the backs of Evanston residents when we have other ideas which are not at the cost of anyone and it just can help everyone?
Okay, so one thing about the noise in Wilmette, it's interesting because in 2019, there was this discussion about Welsh Ryan Arena, okay?
having noise in the chillers, which were extremely painful for several residents in Wilmette. And there was a whole blog that I followed, and I got in contact with them. And they repeatedly tried since, I think it was since 2018 to have it fixed. It's not fixed yet. And that's just like, just one thing coming and emanating from the wind, from the air conditioning system. They did not do anything. The other thing is regarding what the woman that is for these events said. She said two things that struck me. One thing was a major thing about the businesses being on her side, and which, you know, I have not polled businesses now, but in 1996, I got 90% of all the businesses' signatures, all in the 7th and 6th ward, signed a petition against the tennis events. And in 2019, I think I got 63 signatures from businesses in the 7th ward. So I find it very strange if those businesses now suddenly are for this event when they were not for it 3 years ago. Also, the businesses that we have nowadays, you could say, why didn't you get 90% again in 2019? It's because you have corporations now. For example, you have a pet store on Greenway Road. That's a corporation. I did write to the corporations, but corporations don't want to get involved. So it's no longer the kind of businesses that they used to be before. Some businesses said, I'm totally on your side, but I cater to Northwestern students, so I'm afraid of saying something. Another business told me, I'm on your side, but I have business pending in front of the city council, and I don't dare to say anything at this time. So there was this again and again and again. So it's not true that businesses ask for this proposal, because they do lose clients when it's busy. Even restaurants signed a petition for us in 2019 because it's a problem. They do get businesses, for example, during some of the football games, yes, but football games are more like family events because they have to do with students. And except for the Ohio game or so, they generally, it's not a crowd that comes from outside and is not really invested in Evanston. So you cannot compare concerts to football games. There's absolutely no comparison. Also, a football game, the noise, I can hear the noise through closed windows and storm windows when there's football game on, but it's not an ongoing, I mean, there's a loudspeaker and there were the fireworks, but it's not an ongoing concert for 3 hours, 4 hours straight. It's not competing. You cannot compare apples with oranges here. It's a totally different ballgame, I suppose. And the football and basketball games have caused litter and problems, both in Wilmette and I have evidence on my site. I think I published some of the pictures and some of the problems that were caused by them. So it's not true that they are such good neighbors. They're not.
Okay. All right. Any more comments? One more?
Okay. My name is Debbie Sears. I live in Wilmette. For the last 4 years, Wilmette neighbors have complained about loud whining noise that lasts from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day, all summer long, from the Welsh Ryan Marine and chillers. Neighbors cannot enjoy sitting outside with friends and family without having to listen to the loud noise in what used to be their quiet neighborhood. Northwestern has promised again and again to resolve the noise issue, but it has not. The noise has resumed again this year. Northwestern is again promising to solve the problem, but there's really no incentive for them to solve the problem. Since Northwestern has not solved the noise problem that has caused for Wilmette neighbors after 4 years of complaints, how can Northwestern expect us to believe they will resolve neighborhood complaints that arise from huge concerts at Ryder Field? We neighbors do not trust Northwestern's promises, since they have broken their promises to us for over 4 years.
Yeah.
We're gonna hear some noise here. I'm gonna stop recording and Luke is gonna start, so I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Yeah.
1 minute. Recording and stop for a minute. Since our last meeting, and I can pull it up, I don't have it on there, usually I can find it. It's great, but it's, to us, we feel it's very clearly stated that this committee does review impacts in T1 zones. It does exclude some properties, but, you know, very specific properties, and the property at Ashland is not excluded. And I just wanted to also mention, someone mentioned about all the lawsuits that Northwestern was sued. I mean, this committee was actually formed because Northwestern took the city to court because of the historic district, and thus we have this committee. It's about 20 years old, right?
So, as Councilmember Kelly mentioned, we've been in discussion with the university's lawyers, with the Corporation Council for the city, and with the other members of the committee about the purview of this committee and whether or not that T1 district falls within the purview of this committee. They raised an objection initially, as some of you have noted, to discussing this issue in this committee, arguing it falls outside the purview of the committee as it's established by a consent decree, which is a court order that Evanston and Northwestern agreed to settle the lawsuit over the Northeast Evanston Historic District. That was about almost 20 years ago. I've had that exchange. I think it's probably a matter of record now. It's clear, I think, I'd argue this anyway, that the consent decree itself plainly gives this committee purview over the T1 district. So do 19 years of practice back and forth. And we've had this discussion on this committee for a number of years. And we've always had a situation where ultimately the committee heard the concerns of the neighbors adjoining and in the area surrounding the Ashland T1 district. And that has happened on occasion in this committee. And the Northwestern representatives at the time participated in that discussion and so forth. But the university continued to object this time, and ultimately the Corporation Council referred the issue to us. Basically said the committee should sort this out itself, which I think is the right thing to do. And so here we are, prepared to discuss that, and there's no one from Northwestern here. As I mentioned, we've had this discussion at various intervals. We've had discussion about other issues where we've had some dispute with Northwestern about whether things ought to be discussed or not. And I can tell you that I haven't been on this committee since it was created 19 years ago. Just not showing up is a new trick. I have never seen that happen before. I understand people are out of town. I was out of town for the last meeting. I had a telephone. I was able to participate. We have had other personnel from Northwestern come in to address issues. We're not members of the committee, but had information and the ability to hear and consider and take back comments that community members shared. That certainly would have been acceptable today. And Mr. Dara is, I don't know why. I will say this. Northwestern's attendance at these meetings is not optional. Okay? The consent decree is a federal court order. And it says that one of the people that Northwestern names to the committee shall be, not may be, shall be, the vice president responsible for development and land use issues. And the committee that includes that person, who's not here today, shall meet on a regular basis, not may meet, not could meet, not will meet, whenever it feels like it. shall meet on a regular basis or as needed in meetings open to the committee to discuss and make good faith efforts to resolve issues relating to land use, building, zoning pertaining to the university's current D1 districts. That's a federal court order, and they're in violation right now. I don't say it's like, I don't oppose, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't oppose this project altogether, but I do think that they have an obligation as neighbors, and if they won't fulfill that obligation as neighbors, they have an obligation as parties bound by a federal court order to be here to listen to the community's concerns. And I think their absence today it augurs very, very badly. I've never felt about this committee the way I feel right now. It augurs very badly for anything else going forward in this process. If they will not attend when they are legally obligated to do so and hear the legitimate concerns of the community, what does that say about how they're going to negotiate with the city, how they're going to work with the city going forward? I think one of the things we should do tonight is to communicate to land use, to planning and development, to the council itself, that they did this tonight. This is unacceptable. And I think that it augurs, as I say, very badly. And I think they've got to address what happened here
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll do that. We'll draft a statement to the Land Use Commission and to the council. That's what I do. And then I think 4.1, 4.2, and even the item for action about, 4.1 and 4.2, I think we agreed that this is the purview, and I think all of your comments are just so helpful, and I wish Northwestern were here through these comments. But we are going to do our best to summarize input from everybody and provide those points that we feel are really important for consideration to the Land Use Commission. And what we've heard and from the minutes and recordings from the previous meetings also. So thank you. So we can't talk about Northwestern knocks and walks and knocks when that will be scheduled. Let's see. So that's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. So the subcommittee of the City Council, we can talk about that. And I would also, we got some feedback from you all. Some of you addressed that issue of what should be the proper venue. We right now, this is sort of the only official body, that's required by the Meetings Act to be noticed and to address concerns of neighbors and reflections. So I think it's fortunate this exists. But we felt that there should be, well, we weren't sure. We discussed the possibility of having a committee that was specifically formed around the issue of the proposed rebuild and commercial use. I spoke at length with the council member Ravel from the 7th Ward. The feeling was, and I'll just feel free to weigh in if you want, that it wasn't particularly practical. The first August 9th, Northwestern is to go before the Land Use Commission with pretty much the whole kit and caboodle, right? I think everything on August 9th. And that forming a committee, another committee, simply would be not terribly practical at this point. Does that sum it up? So Councilmember Ravel and I talked, and she felt that we should continue here, hearing the concerns. We will sum up as well to the Land Use Commission, other bodies, also for Councilmember Ravel, the concerns and other expressed here, and provide that to her so that she also hears what we heard this evening and understands what we understood. So with that said, I told her that I think this committee is so valuable to not be just one alderman alone with Northwestern, but to have several community members. But I thought maybe going forward, it would be worth looking at something to the effect of, I know this was formed out of the court decree, but an NU City 7th Ward sort of committee that handled issues and concerns that come up around the state. So perhaps down the road, that, that can happen. So I don't know if there are any thoughts on that. So for the moment that we will continue here, and again, by the way, and to David's point, this took so much time and work to get these 4 meetings set up. I mean, orchestrating with the Northwestern, so, I fully agree, with David's remarks. Yes.
I also make one more observation. So the consent decree says the committee shall meet on a regular basis or as needed. But no worries. So the committee shall meet on a regular basis or as needed. I think after tonight, we still need a meeting. And I think we should call one and have them attend at our earliest opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you repeat what you said about August 9th? Because
Okay, so August 9th, Northwestern will go before the Land Use Commission with zoning, with all the zoning requests and commercial, the text amendments.
But I thought that the city had to have that report.
This is what's scheduled, so.
Wasn't that the idea that they would have, that they hired this company with our taxpayers' money?
That's my understanding also.
So why?
How could it be scheduled at this point?
Be allowed to go ahead before we even have that report in?
I think that's a great question, and I will make those inquiries with staff.
Because I thought that was a deal.
Right. Yeah. Without the report, correct. Right. I don't know how it would be on the agenda without having that feedback yet. So, and then everyone should also know on June 27th, if you don't know, there is Councilmember Revelle will be holding with Northwestern a meeting in the Parasol Room at 7 p.m. So,
Sorry, and again, I read the agenda on that, and it is again Northwestern doing a presentation of their so-called sound study. And if it's the same one that I read on the city site, they have the goal to compare the future sounds of things to the sirens from the hospital, saying we already had the sirens from the hospital, so we should be bothered by the concert. Basically, that's the implication.
okay, so would you like us to relay something to Councilmember Revelle regarding the format?
Yes, because I've been to some of these Zoom meeting forums where Northwestern has presented things, in 2019 too, when they presented the Western Arena, or when they presented one of the, one of Revelle, that was in 2019. The way they introduced that thing that happened in 2019 is by asking the neighbors how we would love to, wouldn't we love to have Bruce Springfield come and play. Okay. So, okay, anyway, yes, that guy. And the response was unanimously against having concerts, at the stadium then.
Well, yeah.
I just have a question. I may have missed something, but is Northwestern's demands for the commercialization of Ryan Field still labeled a zoning amendment? Is that how it's going before all the committees that it goes before?
So, I mean, when it goes before the Land Use Commission?
Yeah. Because the Northwestern has styled a zoning amendment. It's not a zoning amendment. It's a drastic change.
Right, it's a text amendment. But I also want to direct everybody to the community development page where you can find everything that it's applying for. And I'm going to just pull this up for a moment so you can all monitor. So I think they recently revised the text amendments. And let me direct you to that page.
Yeah,
because I know in the first one, for example, many of the residents monitor every development and every change and every meeting and date. So I just want to make sure you all know how to fix that.
But my concern is that it be changed and labeled what it really is. And I don't know whether I'm missing
Are you
something.
regarding the youth?
Yeah, I agree.
Regarding commercial
It's a change in zoning, it's not an amendment to an existing zoning.
I agree. Okay. And can you address what is currently they are?
Oh, because right now it's amateur and non-professional. And there's the history, as you see on Spotlight Evanston, which specifically states that that is the purpose of it. And when they came over in 1929, it was with the condition that they were doing the football stadium and education law. And to go to make all, there's 29 acres, 39 acres of commercial use is like going to the beach for a rainy day and ending up with a snack. You know, it's just, there's no way to get from the expressway to the field. And if you look at, you just look at Google Earth, every other facility on Google Earth, you can pick any facility you want and see where there's parking, where the expressway is. Here's Ryan Field, here's the expressway. So anyone who thinks that this only affects Central Street is mistaken, because it's Lake Street and it's Dempster too. And getting on top of, you know, at any day of the week. So say I love someone to let them do what they can do now and see how they handle it. And then, because they can do it, they can do it 10,000 people if they want. They've never done it.
So I just want to direct before I press. So, and I would suggest that everyone look at the proposed project page, and that has at the top, and you can follow, you know, all those zoning requests. And I will make sure too that they have some of the recorded meetings here. I'll make sure that our meeting, that the link to the audio from this meeting is also on that page.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
You were asking for some more comments, so I'm gonna help you there. They already ignored this meeting. This meeting is a court-ordered meeting. And if you form another committee, that committee will not be a court-ordered committee. So they'll ignore that one at will. So I don't see what the point is to form another committee that they can then ignore whenever they feel like it. So I think that that would not be useful. Also, to commit to make a committee that is the seventh ward localizes the issue when this is an issue that's clearly Evanston-wide and actually Wilmette and Evanston-wide, because if they have this, as Mr. Rosinski said, the parking and the traffic and the noise is going to be multiple citywide problems.
And pollution.
And pollution, a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to be multiple citywide, and to say that it's just a seventh ward issue would just not be fair. And the third one is the cost. We're paying $100,000 because we don't trust, because the city council or doesn't trust and doesn't feel that they have the whole story from Northwestern on their first report. So we feel that we have to pay that. But this is supposed to be no cost to the city of Evanston. Let them pay for that. Let them pay for that. Let them pay for the sound thing. Let them pay for every other study that we have to do because they're not giving us the full story. If they don't want to pay that, you know they don't want to pay anything else. I mean, that's chicken feed compared to all the other things that we're going to, that they should be paying. So they should be paying for all of this. Thank you.
And also, I think it's critical to consider, you know, the issue with the hospital is not just about a seventh ward issue of healthcare in just the seventh ward. It's serving a huge amount of the city. So people with heart attacks and medical emergencies, how many of those are not going to be making it to the hospital in time to survive if they have a concert on that day?
Or anything.
Or anything on any day. You know, this can be a matter of life and death for citizens in our city, and we're talking about people in the fifth ward as well as the seventh. So let's not silo the issue that, you know, oh, the wealthy people should take care of that on their side and we don't care. No, people in the fifth ward will be served by the hospital too.
And Wilmette.
And in Wilmette. So, you know, that hospital is there to save lives, and I think that's more important than making profit on concerts.
I just, in regards to the comment about the hospital, Has any city official talked to anyone at Evanston Hospital to ask them about the impact? Because I've had a very informal conversation with someone, and I understand people are saying, oh, well, if we can't go down Central, maybe we'll go down Lincoln. So they have no scope of what potentially could be happening. It could cause litigation if an ambulance can't make it, or a specialist can't make it to the hospital, because Trauma One hospitals have very strict requirements. But then finally, Evanston might say, hospital might say, I don't want to get sued. I can't get my ambulance or specialist there. Let's not be a Trauma One hospital anymore. What's that impact to our city? And because I have a feeling it will be big, and it will be big particularly for underinsured people or people who are on Medicaid as well, because now Evanston Hospital has an obligation, as well as all of us older people. So,
and I just want to point out,
that would be good to know.
that only one Black Hawk, we have Black Hawk Central. Those ambulances are coming from Glenville and Nashville, and that kind of works go team, and sometimes I see stuff, and then from the south side. Yeah, I think it was just perfect, and then all the independents, if there's an accident on the highway, if there's something there. I mean, this is serious stuff, and in my house, I'm so used to it, I don't even notice it, but I've been trying to pay attention. And I would say that we need to get a number from the hospital into how many ambulances go down on every day and weekday. I don't want an average of, over 24 hours. I want the hours between that they can have their concert.
Thank you. No, I think that's
But Mary, it's not just a concert, it's just the unlimited.
I want the time to be, anything that they can do from 8 to 10, because a lot of times traffic studies are averaged over 24 hours, which dilutes what's really happening.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this means anything, but my wife did try to contact Evanston Hospital, just expressing concerns about that project and traffic and noise. And she contacted there's an email to the media relations, I think, department there, or community relations. She received no response. So I'm not sure if that means anything, but that was, it might mean something, because you would think they would have at least some kind of response to that.
Absolutely. No, I think that we'll put that on the agenda. That is, I did meet with the president over various items. I know parking is a huge concern for the hospital.
And it's more quick. And also, it's not just ambulances, it's fire, it's
the schools,
police emergencies, and it's not just heart attacks, it's car crashes, it's all sorts of, things, calamities that happen to people, and they need to be able to access the hospital.
And that should be
And you had mentioned that you were going to give the notes, I think, to Alderwoman Ravel. Can you give them to all of the council members, or
to the mayor, please?
And to the mayor, just because I feel like they're not.
Yeah, and we'll also, like I said, we'll have the recording posted also on the site, so.
Because I feel like since it speaks volumes, obviously, that NU is not in attendance. So they're really putting this on, and the Land Use Commission and the City Council vote.
Certainly. Yes.
I want to speak again to the point of the point person for Northwestern being in Jamaica, and therefore Northwestern couldn't send anybody, and it's played as being patently farcical. I went to Yale as undergraduate, and I've watched the growth of Yale and New Haven. They've agreed to give $180 million to the community. It took a lot of work over time, but eventually that came to be Yale, Harvard, Northwestern. There's a temptation on the part of all of us to think of these entities as some sort of sacred educational institutions. When what's happened really is these large prestigious universities have become acting like corporations. And what the reason Northwestern didn't send anyone tonight is because they are conducting a corporate marketing campaign to build Ryan Field. And they are going to do anything and be in any form only if they can control it. because that's part of the corporate marketing campaign. And I think we have to recognize that we're dealing with a hybrid corporate organization and not with a sacred institution of higher learning.
Just a brief question. I'm curious, Councilmember Kelly and others, if Mayor Biss has kept you or other council members or city officials apprised of his conversations, perhaps negotiations with President Schill and others at Northwestern. Because the mayor, despite what he said in his State of the City address about feeling he's an obligation to speak on matters that are important, has been mum on this one. So I'm just curious.
I have not been apprised by, Mayor. I will say I have met with President Schill. I will share now. I'm moving forward, a proposal for a pilot task force, payment in lieu of taxes task force to come to the table. So, I have met with Schill on that, but that was a while ago. It passed out, with full, support of the Finance and Budget Committee. And that was the other reason I also met with the president of the hospital. So hopefully that, a little bit of a separate topic, but I hope that will go before council within, after I have a chance to meet with other heads of tax exempt entities, sometime this year. So.
Blessings for that work.
Yeah.
Thank you. And some of us are concerned about the mayor because the council has 9 members and one will recuse himself because he works full-time for Northwestern, so he has said at least 8. And from my calculation and thinking, it's going to be 4 against 4, probably, maybe. And the mayor will have the vote that will determine this thing. So that's why he needs to be appraised. One thing that maybe you can do is maybe personally tell him, beg him to read that website.
Yeah, thank you. I need that website.
I think I sent him the link a long time ago. I don't.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Absolutely.
But to read it in depth, you have to take the time. If every day he reads half an hour, he should be through with it. It's not the truth, but
great.
Also, one reason I'm here out of public concern about Daniel Biss's vote on this issue is that many of you probably know about the second ward campaign with Darlene Cannon and Chrissy Harris. And I'm very,
I just want to kind of keep it focused though on.
yeah.
but this was very focused on Chrissy Harris getting ahead, and Chrissy Harris got money from the Ryan family for her campaign. So there's something revealed about that that I'm very concerned about whose side this is on. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I just want to say there's much of what came up this evening, we'll put on the agenda for the additional meeting that we're going to schedule, including chillers. I thought that was going to be addressed when I was first elected. We met, they said they would create with Councilmember Rubel that there would be a meeting about that. That did not happen. I don't know about the chillers.
Problem does not happen.
Okay.
Can I also talk about the
Well,
color?
but as well as the hospital, I think there were many items.
There were a couple.
On regarding the chillers.
I mean, I got a little of you regarding that, and how they were gonna do this, and then they were gonna do that, and then it was,
Okay.
and then pull people over. And
We'll put the chillers, hospital, and other concerns that were raised on that agenda.
Great.
And I think we were hoping for a hard stop at 8, so
Okay.
I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Thank you.
Can I just say, like, chillers? Right, so you want
Which button? You said hit the end call. Luke, are you on there? Oh, here.